Good morning to you all once again, and you are welcome to today's lecture. We are going to look at training and management development in international human resource management. So primarily, we are going to consider how training and development is conducted in international context. So when we decide to prepare people for international assignments, what are the sort of things we consider in order to equip them for the task ahead? So primarily that is what we'll be looking at today. And by the end of the lecture, it is expected that students should be able to at least appreciate these issues raised in the course outline. So by the end of this lecture, students should be able to explain the 7 imperatives of training in multinational enterprises. So there have been 7 specific objectives that have been identified to be requisites for the successful implementation of any training or development intervention by multinational enterprises. We'll be looking at them. Again, we will also be looking at some of the issues or challenges that one must anticipate when it comes to the training of international workforce and some of the dilemmas that we have to negotiate through in order to become successful. Then we will also be looking at how we can adopt a localized approach to global training and development. And by localization here, we are referring to the degree to which the training and development policies and programs that are available at the headquarters is not damped on the subsidiary countries or the subsidiary companies of the multinational enterprise. So there is the need for them to at least modify it to suit the tastes and preferences of the local constituents. So those are the issues that we'll be considering under the localization approach. Then we will quickly look at the definition of a global mindset, how you can acquire global mindset, and how you can also develop, design, and deliver cross-cultural training. The 3 things that you need to consider. Okay. Now, the case in point. So I'm going to begin with a case study from General Electric, which is a multinational enterprise very much noted for the provision of energy to several countries and firms. And based on some of the lessons we deduced from this General Electric case, we will be also looking at the 7 imperatives of training and development in international human resource management. Now, I will also admonish you to, as part of the lessons you draw from this particular case, try and anticipate possible questions that can come from the case, because you might never know. Maybe you meet it in future and it will not be just a case study without question, but it might be coming with specific questions for you to answer. So I will entreat you to go through the case, look at possible questions that are likely to come. That is by applying all the things you've learned so far in class. Then try and also solve them. If you have any concern or questions in understanding some of the issues in the case, in the course of the week, you can get in touch. Now, so when the enterprise, which is General Electric, when enterprises operate subsidiaries and partnership overseas, the training of the members of their global workforce takes a special importance and difficulty. Many international human resource professionals simply try to apply successful training programs from the headquarters. But often, this doesn't work, as General Electric found out when it purchased a French medical equipment manufacturing firm, which is called C. General de Radiology, simply put, CGR, in a bid to solidify GE's place as the leader in this industry. Essentially, GE attempted to Americanize the French firm by establishing a successful American management system. So they were just trying to replicate what was happening in US and the French in France. GE executives planned seminars for the French managers to socialize their new French counterparts into the GE culture. So in a bid to train the new managers that were going to handle the French subsidiary, which is the new acquired radiology manufacturing firm, they decided to take the French managers through some sort of socialization in order to help them embrace their culture, that is the corporate culture. The French managers were given t-shirts to wear at the seminars with the slogan, "Go for one," meaning our goal as GE managers is to be the number one in the industry. The French managers wore the t-shirts, but were highly insulted and humiliated, feeling they were being forced to wear uniforms, something which is anathema to the French. So it was unheard of, or it was strictly abhorred in the French culture, even though the Americans were trying to impose it on them. So in there, you can see that some of their culture is clashing. Needless to say, the seminar did not achieve its goal of building cohesion among the French managers and their new employer, which is General Electric. And the reason for this failure is simple. One party is feeling humiliated and insulted, so you can never expect them to go along. In addition, GE posted English posters. So we are talking about a French subsidiary where English language posters are being posted. Take note of it. And they also try to adapt the accounting system without understanding the French accounting standards. Chart plans lay workers of American style when it's they were trying to lay workers of American style when it lost money the first year, resulting in 1,500 key employees quitting and creating a recruitment nightmare. In essence, GE lost a significant portion of its competitive advantage in Europe in this industry due to its cross-cultural misunderstandings, its lack of respect for anything French, and a poor HR strategy. Nevertheless, since a global enterprise's human capital may be its most important source of competitive advantage, a well-trained and educated global workforce is critical to success in the global market. Therefore, the following 7 imperatives have been suggested as key to global organizational learning and training and development. So now this is where I expect you to preempt some questions that is likely to come out of this case in future. So try and tease it out and find your own solutions to it. If you are able to find some and you also prefer solutions to it, you can contact me in the course of the week for us to discuss. So what are the 7 imperatives which are key to global organizational learning and training and development? Let's look at them one by one. The first one is that as a multinational enterprise, you have to think and act globally. Think and act globally. Now, what does this mean? It simply implies that any global enterprise must think about and prepare for a presence in all critical markets in the world, not just in its home country. So here we are just trying to say that in as much as multinational enterprises originate from the home country or the headquarters, where perhaps they might be having a higher percentage of their market share coming from, it is important for them to also look at the bigger picture, the whole world as a global village. And for that matter, try to approach every area or every country where they have their subsidiary with equal respect, just as they will attribute to the headquarters. And so in their policy formulations, their formulation of programs for training and development, they must not be only looking at it from the myopic or the headquarters perspective, but they must be thinking about what is happening globally or what can globally assist them to have a competitive edge. The second imperative is that they must become an equidistant global learning organization, becoming an equidistant global learning organization. That is, learning from all cultures, anytime, in any manner possible, must be facilitated. Honda, for example, has a manufacturing division in Japan, North Korea, and Europe, so 3 places. All the 3 legs of the major markets of the world. But its managers do not think or act as if the company were divided between Japanese and overseas operations. So they are trying to say that even though Honda's parent company is located, or the headquarters is located at Japan, and they have subsidiaries in Japan, North America, and Europe, they treat each of these subsidiaries just as they will approach the Japanese one. Okay. In fact, the very word overseas has no place in Honda's vocabulary because the corporation sees itself as equidistant from all its key customers. So they are not placing the customers in Japan over or above that of the North American or the European markets. They are treating them equally, and so they do not place priority in terms of how they treat the workforce and the customers across these jurisdictions. The third imperative is to focus on the global system, not its parts. So here we are talking about looking at the whole world as a system, but not looking at the various countries that make up the whole world, or the various countries in silos. So that is, the development of programs need to focus on breaking down the silos of departments and even the boundaries between countries and those that separate customers and suppliers, and focus on the bigger picture, that is global organizational system. So basically, we are trying to liken the global village analogy to, if you like, a system with interconnected parts. And as we all know, for a system to run effectively, you don't have to be placing premium or importance on some parts over the other, but equal premium must be given to every minute part that is functioning to keep the system whole. So the same way, in terms of the formulation of policies and programs for the sustenance of the multinational enterprise, they must be thinking about how such policies or program can help each subsidiary together with the headquarters to function in order to gain competitive advantage. So that is what we mean by focusing on the global system and not state parts. The fourth one is to develop global leadership skills. And by global leadership skills, we are saying that global leadership requires competencies different from those needed in domestic markets. And this should be the focus of global training and development. For a multinational enterprise to leave its footprints in the international business landscape, they must have global leadership at the helm of affairs. And these global leaders that they will be churning out are people with distinctive capabilities and such that they will be making enviable marks not only at their domestic locations or the subsidiary levels where they will be working, but this success story should be reflective across the globe. And so that is why you have to get people that have a lot of international experience or acumen, and that can also decipher what is happening cross-culturally and globally for them to turn them into their company's advantage. Now, the fifth imperative is empower teams to create a global future. Empower teams to create a global future. Multinational and cross-border teams should be increasingly used and empowered to perform critical organizational projects and problem-solving activities. In addition, multinational teams can themselves be a major tool to develop cross-cultural competencies. Now, we all know that in multinational enterprises, you'll be having people from different countries and different cultural contexts working together and pooling their strengths whilst overcoming their weaknesses in order to make their organization more viable. Now, to be successful, it means that respect must be accorded to everyone's country and the orientation or perspective they are bringing on board. And research indicates that once you are able to properly calibrate or form these cross-border teams composing of people with different cultural expertise and experiences, at the end of the day, they are able to tap into each other's strengths in order to forge ahead. And so that is why we are saying that if you want to be a serious multinational enterprise that is a force to reckon with, then there is the need for you to empower teams that will be cutting across borders. So you should be hiring top people from different countries to come and contribute their quota. Now, the sixth one is that make learning a core competence for the global organization. That is, the global organization needs to become a global learning organization where learning and development permeates all that the organization does. So it means that the organization must be constantly learning and adapting to the changing events within the business markets. And as Ari De Gees, a former head of the strategic planning and Royal Dutch Shell, puts it, over the long term, the only sustainable competitive advantage may be an organization's ability to learn faster than its competitors. And so learning must be the only avenue that is driving the change and development of a multinational enterprise. And the last imperative is that regularly reinvent yourself and the global organization. And the bottom line of this imperative is that as a multinational enterprise, you have to be in control or be in charge of your success and be able to control things that can make you fail. This implies that there is the need for constant self-development. And that is why we are saying that constant self-development must become the cornerstone of strategies for success for both individuals and organizations in today's highly competitive global economy. Now, so we are now going to shift to the nature of and problems with training of foreign workforce in an attempt to train people for international assignments or to train experts or to train people in multinational enterprises, both at the headquarters or subsidiary. So particularly, we are going to focus on the subsidiary level. What are the possible problems that the multinational enterprise is likely to encounter when it comes to the development and dissemination of training interventions? And what are also the various dilemmas that multinational enterprises confront, particularly if they have a lot of subsidiaries in addition to the headquarters? So when enterprises operate subsidiaries and partnerships around the world, the training of the members of their global workforce takes on a special importance and difficulty. The major issues related to global training and development centers and development center around the design, development, and implementation of the communication and training programs, including both technical and non-technical training. So we are saying that some of the major issues that confront global T&D usually hovers around how these training programs are developed, how they are designed, and after design, how they are also developed and implemented, and the sort of language it is used to communicate the training interventions, and so on and so forth. So we are saying that it is risky to roll these out without localization. It is very much risky to roll this training, design, development, and implementation out without trying to readjust it to suit the subsidiary level where you are going to implement it, particularly if the culture and style of learning or education in that particular subsidiary country is totally different from where the parent company or the headquarters is located. And once you do not localize it, it reduces the acceptance and effectiveness level of the training intervention. And this is particularly true because the end recipients of this training program or training intervention will be seeing it as new in their environment. And for that matter, they will feel that they are being forced to accept something which does not fall within their culture. And there's likely to be a lot of resistance. So localization of training programs is very much important. And by localization, it includes the localized translation, adaptation to local cultural practices, and compliance with the local laws affecting training. So there is a need for the training manuals and materials to be translated into an acceptable language. There is also the need for the design and the way it will be disseminated to be modified so that the local cultural practices is adapted or incorporated into it. And it must also sit well with some of the laws that have been set for training in such localities. Too often, corporate training and development simply try to apply successful training programs from the headquarters. So this is how we've been doing it in the parent company or at the headquarters. Therefore, immediately it comes into our mind that there is the need for us to administer a training program in our various subsidiaries. Then directly, they pick it wholesale and implement it over there. And this is likely to face a lot of acceptance problems and effectiveness when it comes to the implementation outcomes. So the type of problems confronting multinational enterprises when it begins to discuss the need for training of its local workforce around the world include the following. One, so who should deliver the training in the foreign subsidiary or joint venture? Is it someone from the headquarters or someone at the subsidiary level? So we are asking whether trainers from the headquarters or local trainers or independent trainers that will be outsourced. How should the training be delivered? Are there local cultural differences that needs to be considered? So this is also another question which confronts or complicates the delivery and the design of training interventions in multinational enterprises. Then the next problem or issue is, what are the effects of language differences? So in the case of the General Electric and the subsidiary they purchase in French, you realize in America, their official language is English, whereas in France, it is what? French. And so the language differences can even cause an issue. Will there be translation problems? So if you are translating from English to French or from French to English, are you likely to encounter problems? And how will you unravel some of these problems? So we are thinking of both written and orally. Are there differences in meaning of words? Are there terms and phrases that do not exist in the foreign language, so that at the end of the day, you will have to borrow the language from the original source? Who should take responsibility for the translation? Is it someone from the subsidiary company or someone from the headquarters? And who will even make this particular decision? So, should training programs be exported from the headquarters, like it happened in the GE case, or should overseas employees be brought to centralized or regional training facilities? Can training programs be developed in various locations and made available for everyone? So that will be localization. What are the effects of the various options? If you decide to go for the headquarters one, which is exported to the subsidiary, what are the consequences? If you decide to develop the training programs in various locations, what are the consequences? That is, will it be disconnected from the corporate strategy, and so on and so forth? Now, number 5, should courses for management development be handled differently than training for host country and third country employees? These are questions that you need to grapple with. To ensure respect for each host country's culture, should each subsidiary or joint venture develop its own training? Do they have capabilities? That is, do they have the experts that can actually develop and administer at the subsidiary level and how will that be consistent with the corporate strategy? Or are there strong reasons to insist on centrally developed training programs? How does multinational enterprises adapt a training program in terms of both content and the process of the training to different countries and culture? So primarily when it comes to the design, development, and implementation of training programs in multinational enterprises, these are the sort of problems or issues, or if you like, dilemma that they go through in an attempt to settle on the best strategy that can help them achieve their long-term objectives. Now, localization approach to global training and development. Like I was saying earlier on, if a multinational enterprise assumes that the headquarters way of doing things is much superior, and so it should be exported to other aspects of their subsidiary countries, they are likely to face a lot of resistance, and the program is even likely to fail, particularly because it did not take into consideration the cross-cultural differences which is at play over here. So when they decide to use the localization approach, what happens? Cross-cultural differences play an important role in the design, development, and implementation of T&D for multinational enterprises. In addition, structural components such as legal obligations, train, educational levels, different approaches to education, and educational system may impact the effectiveness of the training and development. So if you take the educational level, for instance, the educational level in Ghana is totally different from that of US and that of UK. And if you even take the availability of internet and technology, you realize we are still trying to catch up, whilst they are now even heading towards the moon. And so all these differences can affect the design, development, and implementation of T&D, particularly its success. So for example, an American multinational enterprise spent several $millions on upgrading its IT system in all of its plants around the world, as well as on training initiatives to make sure that everyone understood the new system. Yet, its HR director couldn't understand why months after the training had taken place, some subsidiaries were still using the old procedures. So they had spent huge sums of money, running into millions of dollars, to upgrade their IT system and also educate the global workforce on the need for this new IT system. But having spent all this money, some subsidiaries were still not complying. And what could be accounting for these differences in the compliance? And these are some of the findings they identified. Although the Scandinavians, so when we talk about Scandinavians, we are referring to Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, and so on and so forth. Although the Scandinavians and the British welcomed the new ideas, the French, Italians, and Latin Americans were reluctant to accept another diktat from the US headquarters. So they saw it as a form of dictatorship. Something was being imposed on them. And that was why they felt the need to resist or to comply. Now, although the Asians didn't complain during the training sessions, so here too, culture is at play when it comes to the issue of collectivism. Okay, usually collectivists tend to be more conservative. So they will not be telling you their true feelings, but behind your back, they will be actually doing something to affect you. They also fail to implement the new system. Sometimes firms face such disappointment because they simply transfer a program devised at the headquarters straight to another country without taking cultural norms which are available at the subsidiary level into account. And it goes much deeper than just translating the training material into another language. So, for instance, from English to French. Trainers have to work around the cultural nuances as well. And by cultural nuances, we mean the way, for instance, classroom settings maintained in Ghana is totally different from that of America or the European context. So that is why I was saying that if you still link it to the issue of power distance, because the power distance in Ghana is very, very wide or high, it will be inappropriate for you to be calling your teachers by their first name when they are trying to teach you or train you. The same thing will maintain when it comes to these cross-cultural training interventions. Okay, so as you read some of these things, be relating it to some of the cultural issues we've learned. Now, the global training falls flat because it is just completely inappropriate for the particular culture. Although there is no general roadmap for adjusting T&A programs to local conditions and cultures, at minimum, international HR professionals must make the effort to understand the local laws, practices, employer obligations in order to improve the probability to achieve the required learning and development objectives. So now we're also going to look at some of the factors that influence cross-border training and development. And by this, we are referring to things that needs to be considered if you want to conduct any cross-cultural or cross-border training and development intervention. And this is particularly true for multinational enterprises. So training and development localization issues consider or is influenced by factors such as culture. So that is the first one. Before they set up a training program in a foreign subsidiary, international HR professionals must understand how that culture views educational process. For instance, in many Ghanaian cultures, education is considered to be a very authoritarian phenomenon. And that was the power distance issue I was referring to. The teacher is seen as the expert, and students should respect. So the teacher is always up there, and the students, even sometimes when you think you, the student, you know the right thing, you still have to afford that dignity and respect to the teacher. The second factor is learning styles. This issue is also related to culture. It is clear that in addition to personal lifestyles, personal learning styles, people from different cultures and countries are used to different training and teaching styles. We are saying that the kind of culture you grew up in and the country you are also originating from has the likelihood to influence your training, learning, and teaching style. And thus, their most comfortable learning approaches need to be considered in the design and delivery of the training program. So that if in a particular country where your subsidiary is located, the predominant learning style over there is group discussion. and you don't go and impose individual learning on them, and so on and so forth. The fourth factor is educational levels and forms. One of the reasons that the provision of training to multiple subsidiaries around the world is so complex is because the basic educational infrastructure varies so much from one country to the other. Now, you move from Ghana, we have the primary system, the DHS, which is 3 years, secondary school, which is now 3 years. But in other countries, they have from primary to SHS as primarily the basic school, within which they have stipulated years to accomplish. Some have even, they go through JSS within 4 years and SHS within 4 years. University in some countries, it is just 3 years. In other countries, it is 5 years, and so on and so forth. And in terms of the sort of infrastructure, the facilities that or accoutrements that have been put in place to facilitate smooth education across the globe is not even the same. Okay, so this indicates that the basic level of literacy varies dramatically. The nature of the educational system and the type of education it provides vary significantly, whether theoretical or practical in orientation. Now, the level, nature, and availability of higher education varies, and the availability of vocational education varies considerably. And teaching and therefore learning styles used in any country's school system vary from culture to culture. And this even means that when it comes to the availability of talented pool from which you can do recruitment and selection from, as you move from one context to the other, these educational levels and forms will also influence their availability and readiness to hit the ground running. In addition, familiarity with various teaching techniques and media, so that is the medium through which you will conduct the teaching, as well as the relationship between students and instructor also varies so much that it is often impossible to transfer directly either the content or the method of instruction from one place to the other. Now, the issue of language. Language as a factor. There are a number of issues in global T&D that involves language. One has to do with whether to provide training for the global workforce in a single language, a common language, or to translate training programs into varying languages for the global workforce. If the training is provided in a single language, that language will likely be the language of the headquarters or English. Another has to do with the language classes themselves in order to enable employees to be able to interact more effectively, both within the enterprise as well as to interact effectively with external constituents such as suppliers, subcontractors, and customers. And so language is also a huge challenge when it comes to the dissemination of the training program, because you are torn between using the most dominant or the most populous language across the constituents. And when you adopt that, how will the other subsidiary countries also react to it, and so on and so forth. Now, training and development laws. Multinational enterprises must also take account of the national laws and regulations affecting training and development in the country of operation. These laws focus on the requirement to spend a certain percentage of payroll expenses on training, or alternatively, pay a percentage in taxes to a government or sponsored training program. to train on certain subjects such as safety, sexual harassment, cross-train, reduction in forces, etc. To translate materials into local language, to provide financial resources for employees to receive training, or to comply with labor contracts. So depending, every country that you go to has its own laws surrounding training and development issues. And in some countries, they have specific clauses that training interventions cannot be administered by a foreign national. And even if a foreign national will be embarking on it, it should be commissioned by someone from the local country. So some of these things must be privy to the IHRM for him to comply with in order not to attract any penalties. And transfer of learning, whether what you have learned through the training program can actually be translated or used in the real world of work. And this issue has to do with the extent to which people on training programs are able to or actually do apply what they learn in training programs to their day-to-day jobs. So those were the factors that need to be conducted, or factors that influence cross-border training and development programs. Now, let's quickly look at the concept of global mindsets. And as I mentioned earlier on, multinational enterprises aspire to have global leadership spearheading their proceedings. And to be successful in that, such leaders must possess what we call global mindset. So we are going to go through what global mindset means and why it is important in cross-border training and development programs. Knowing how to live and work across cultures is the essential competence of people with a global mindset. So when we say someone has a global mindset, it primarily means they are culturally intelligent and they are able to live across cultures or with people, they're able to work with people from different countries or cultures without having a lot of difficulties in their interaction. A global mindset means that one has the ability to scan the world from a broad perspective and always looking for unexpected trends and opportunities that may constitute a threat or an opportunity to achieve personal, professional, or organizational objectives. So, what are some of the characteristics of a person who has a global mindset? And when we say someone has a global mindset, what will make us actually that person stand out? The first one is that such people are able to manage global competitiveness. And by saying they are able to manage global competitiveness, we are saying that they have a broader business skills. And they also exhibit the ability to conduct business on a global scale, as well as to design and manage complex international structures and strategies. They demonstrate awareness of national differences, global trends, options, and the global impact of their decisions and choices. These technical and business skills provide them the credibility in their various international assignments. So these are people that are very much experienced when it comes to international business. And they bring all these expertise in their interaction and pursuit of any business strategy. So at any point in time, they are looking at the broader picture instead of a domestic manager who is always fixated about the happenings in their local constituency. Now, a second feature of a person with a global mindset is that they also work and communicate with multiple cultures. That is, they show the ability to interact with people from many cultures with sensitivity to their cultural and language differences. And they understand different cultural contexts and incorporate that understanding in their work and communication style. They understand the impact of cultural factors on communication and work relationship and are willing to revise and expand their understanding as part of their personal and professional growth and development. So simply put, they are culturally intelligent. The third one is that they are also in a position to manage global complexities, contradictions, and conflicts. That is, they show the ability to manage complex contradictions and conflicts which are experienced when dealing with multiple countries and cultures. So such people are less likely to be subdued by clash of cultures. They are always in control when they are dealing with cultures differing from their own culture. And they develop a sensitivity to different cultures and cultural values. They function effectively in different cultural environments. So, in terms of their level of adaptability, it is up there. The fourth characteristic is that they also manage organizational adaptability. They demonstrate the ability to manage organizational change and respond to new situations. So such people are always not fixated with current happenings of the organization, but they are also very much sensitive to the changing needs in the business environment, so that if it suffices for their organizations to change their current way of doing things in order to remain competitive, then they are in a position to initiate such change. So they show the ability to reframe their fields of reference, to be flexible, changing their organizational culture when necessary. And the fifth one is that they are also good when it comes to the management of multicultural teams. That is, they are able to effectively manage cross-border and multicultural teams. And like I mentioned earlier on, as part of the factors, these multicultural teams are very much key or instrumental to the success of multinational enterprises, since the participants of these cross-border or multicultural teams bring their own perspective. So when you are able to manage these things well, then it means you'll be getting value for your multinational enterprise. And that is why we say that they value the diversity present in such teams and are able to be a cross-border coach, coordinator, or mediator of conflict for such teams. Then they also good in managing uncertainty and chaos. That is, they are comfortable with ambiguity and patience with evolving issues, which are so characteristics of global experience. They can make decisions in the face of uncertainties that can see patterns and connections within the chaos of the global event. So you can liken this one to tolerance level for ambiguity. That is the uncertainty avoidance continuum that we did under hostess cultural dimensions. Such people tend to score low when it comes to uncertainty avoidance. So which means their tolerance level for risk-taking or uncertainty or chaos is high. Now, how do you acquire a global mindset? Acquiring a global mindset. Research indicates that four things are key to the acquisition of global mindset. And what are these four factors? It can be summarized as the four T's, and this include travel, training, team, and transfer. To sum up, you cannot be sitting in your minute location or constituency in your own country and be expecting to acquire this global mindset with ease. There is the need for you to travel a lot across borders in order to witness for yourself at first hand what is actually happening over there, how such cultures are different from yours, and be learning from it. So that the moment you get to the upper echelon or the leadership position, you will be in a good position to actually understand why things are done differently and appreciate it as you implement. So traveling is key. Then there is also the need for you to train. Train means that you need to undergo a lot of training, not only on the job, but sometimes to off the job and on your own. And this training will expose you to things that are done differently beyond your country or constituency. And there is a need for you to also appreciate working in teams. And by working in these cross-border teams, you be able to get access to and appreciate the different perspectives that people from different cross-border countries bring on board whenever you are taking decisions. And there's also the need for you to transfer what you've learned. You don't have to keep it. At the end of the day, it must be beneficial or it must impact the job that you are doing. So that is where the transfer bit comes in. So 4 things becomes imperative: travel, train, team, and transfer. Now, international training and development activities. So when we are embarking on international T&D, a number of activities are carried out. The first one is what we call cross-cultural training. And in fact, it is very much salient to the success of any international T&D intervention, cross-cultural training. Traditionally, multinational enterprises have used cross-cultural training to increase the knowledge and skills of international assignees to help them operate effectively in the unfamiliar host culture. The goal of any cross-cultural training is to increase an international assignee's specific cross-cultural knowledge of a given country. The design and delivery of cross-cultural training. The training for cross-cultural adjustment should focus on helping international assignees and their families to do 3 things. The first one is that we should be able to assist them to become aware that behaviors vary across cultures, including being different than what they are used to, and work at observing these differences quite carefully. So this cross-cultural training is envisaged to sensitize or admonish international assignees and their families that are likely to accompany them that the way things are done within their culture or within their country is not universally accepted or the universal norm. And where differences are likely to occur, these differences are pointed out to them for them to appreciate some of these perspectives. The second objective is also to help these international assignees and their family build a mental map of the new culture so that they can understand why local people value certain behaviors and ideas and how those behaviors and ideas may be appropriately reproduced. So basically, it helps you to create in your mind's eye why certain behaviors are held in high esteem in other contexts. And the last one is that it also assists them to practice the behaviors they need to be effective in their overseas assignments. So it will basically prepare you to survive when you get out there. Without training of this sort, most people will not be successful in learning to adapt to their new culture. And this can have deleterious consequences on the success of expatriates. So when we were discussing the success and failure of expatriates on their international assignments, when cross-cultural training is not done properly, then it can also affect their ability to succeed on their international assignments. And this is particularly true because already they are not well-versed or prepared to fit in that culture, let alone contribute their culture in there. Now, pre-departure cross-cultural orientation. Pre-departure cross-cultural orientation primarily considers the training or preparatory program that is administered to prepare expatriates or international assignees and their family members for the task that they will be carrying out on their international assignments. As an international training activity, the immediate goal of cross-cultural orientation is to help an international assignee learn the basics. That is, what currency will I be using to transact at during my international assignments? How is the public transport system at the host country? What is the nature of working hours? Is it Monday to Saturday, or is it Monday to Sunday, or it is just Monday to, sorry, is it 9 to 12, or it is 9 to 5, or it is 8 to 4, or so on and so forth. So by having these basics at your fingertips, you will be in a good position to comfortably live and work in the host country. Now, key issues are tackled as interventions during the pre-departure orientation. And the first one is diversity training. Depending on the immediacy of the need, that is how fast one needs to be prepared at the pre-departure orientation to go for the assignment. Diversity training can either be an international training activity or international development activity. So just like we learned last semester, a distinction can be made between training and development. At the international level too, a distinction can be made between international training activity and international development activity. So whereas the international training activity will be focusing on the preparation of the individual to perform their current job, international development activity will be preparing the individual not only for their current job, but for their future positions as well. The goal of the diversity training is to increase one's ability to understand and appreciate multicultural perspectives. Then there's also language training at the pre-departure orientation, particularly if the language that is used at the host country is different from that of the home country. Language country can also be an ITA or an IDA, but in practice, it's most often offered with an international assignee is most of it when an international assignee will be moving to a country where the language training in another language is needed. In terms of IDA, organizations may offer language trainings in the corporate language for all who are interested. So if the corporate language is English, then it becomes the generic training, medium of training. And so before you even go, you'll also be required to do it. Then the third thing that are considered at the pre-departure orientation is traditional education in international management. And usually, these are some of the things that you can acquire from your university or polytechnic education. So university or specific training programs are often offered as part of large developmental plan and therefore more likely to be an IT. Okay. And the goal of the traditional program is to increase international business acumen and knowledge. It should be IDA, not IT. Let's say we are talking about development. Then there is also cross-cultural, cross-national coaching or mentoring as part of pre-departure orientation. Generally viewed as an IDA, cross-national coaches or mentors help international assignees build cultural awareness, work on cultural blind spots, and help develop competencies for becoming effective in an international environment. So what we mean by cross-national coaches or mentors, these are people, highly reputable or astute people in the multinational enterprise who might not necessarily be in the country where you are originating or you are migrating from. But because there's the need for you to acquire some international experience, you can be paired with them for them to be nurturing you on some of the things you should be expecting, particularly from their own perspective and for their own cultural experience. So those are the cross-national coaches or mentors. Then immersion cultural experience. Generally viewed as an IDE, the goal of immersion is to, with rather quick experience, produce culture shock for the developmental purpose of increasing one's ability to recognize and appreciate multiple cultural perspectives. So immersion cultural experiences simply means that the international assignee, before they depart at the pre-departure level, they will be immersed into the specific culture they are going to live in. And by immersion, it could be that they will be given an opportunity to go and stay there for about a month or two, just to familiarize with the culture over there. So that by the time it is right for them to embark on the international assignments, that cultural environment will not be new to them. The last one is international assignments. International assignments may be a means by which people develop cross-cultural competencies. And the outcome that the more immediate focus ITS hope to influence. So when you give people the opportunity to embark on a lot of international assignments, that is someone who has already embarked on one before, such people develop the acumen to be successful when it comes to future international assignments. Now, the content of a training program. Usually, training of international assignees or training manual designed for the workforce of multinational enterprises generally have these or as part and parcel of the components. And the first one has to do with language training. Because multinational enterprises almost always have people with different cultural and country background. It is important that the most widely spoken languages, or the language which is commonly used across the enterprise, is properly inculcated among the workforce. Then there is also the need for cultural training so that diversity issues will be properly managed and appreciated. In assessing career development, there is the need for the workforce to be properly directed on how they can progress on their career ladder, as far as career development is concerned, and how they will be in a position to manage personal and family lives. Most of these people, especially those that go on international assignments, are sometimes torn between going with their family or leaving them behind. And if these issues are not properly managed, it can have negative toll, not only on the individual and their psychological well-being, but on the organization as well, because once it affects the individual to deliver, then the organizational productivity will be what's affected. So basically, these are some of the issues that form part and parcel of the content of such training programs. Now, let's look at the training techniques or methods that are used when it comes to cross-cultural or cross-border or international training and development for international IHRM. The first one is informational training. And these are a sort of training which are administered to inform the international assignees or the global workforce some of the things they should expect, for instance, when they go into the subsidiary countries, some of the things they can adopt to survive over there, some of the cultural issues, and so on and so forth. So something to enlighten them about different cultures, different ways of behaving or doing things, and so on and so forth. And these informational trainings can be disseminated through lectures, through reading materials such as books, journals, articles, and it could also be administered through videotapes, which are recorded to provide basic information about the destination country's history, their economy, political institutions, language, and religion. Then we also have experiential seminars. And these are seminars or workshops which are organized to build understanding of self-awareness, communication style, empathy, listening skills, and non-judgmental behavior. So basically, these seminars are expected to provide further information and experiences beyond the reading materials or videos or the lectures over here. Okay. Then field experiences. These field experiences could be an opportunity to meet with ex-global assignees and microculture within the home country to lead to the understanding of the customs, values, beliefs, and non-verbal behaviors of the destination country. It could also be a visit, a short stay or visit to the destination country in order to familiarize yourself with some of the things that you learn through the informational training or the experiential seminars. And the third one is also language skills. It can also be taught through classes, recorded series where you'll be listening and practicing, computers, web-based learning, tutoring used to develop proficiency in interpersonal and survival communication skills. Now, Research indicates that to design an effective cross-cultural training program, there are 5 phases that one needs to follow, and these phases are systematic. In other words, you cannot start from step 1, then you go to step 5, then you come to step 2. It has to be followed systematically, and that is why we call it a systematic approach to cross-cultural training. And the systematic approach to cross-cultural training basically contains that there are 5 phases that can be followed to design a cross-cultural training initiative, which is very much effective. And what are these 5 phases or stages? The first one is to identify the type of global assignment for which cross-cultural training is needed. Now, once you're able to identify the sort of assignment that you are sending the expatriate to go and perform, then it will also influence the requisite phases and strategies that you adopt. So if the person is going to assist in the administration of a new policy that has been introduced at the headquarters, then that assignment will also influence the kind of training that you administer. Okay. And so on and so forth. Now, the second stage is to determine the specific cross-cultural training needs, whether it is at the organizational or individual level. So if it is a policy which is going to be implemented at the organizational level, then it means that such a person, as far as the international assignee is concerned, is that he will be dealing with a larger target audience. And so the cross-cultural training should be done for him to be very much adaptive and sensitive, and also culturally intelligent. And at the individual level too, there are some needs that you have to consider. So that is why last semester I taught you something about organizational analysis, person analysis, and task analysis. That is primarily what is happening at this level. And the information that you get over here, you use it to establish the goals and measures for determining cross-cultural training effectiveness. Okay. So the organizational analysis and organizational level, assignments level, and the individual level. Assignment level will be the task level or the task assessments. The information you gain from there will help you to set the parameters for the goals or the standards that are supposed to be achieved, and the measures to determine whether those standards have been appropriately achieved. Then, with such information, you will develop and deliver a cross-cultural training program. So we are going to rely on this good or this information you get from here to develop a robust cross-cultural training program. Then you deliver it. Now, because you already have goals and measures over here, you have to rely on it to evaluate whether the cross-cultural training program was effective. And by effective, we mean that whether you were able to achieve the targets that you set forth to achieve, or whether there is a deviation. And so when there is a deviation, you need to learn from the mistakes, the reasons why you were not able to achieve it, so that in future, you can jump over such hurdles. And all these things need to be properly documented so that other subsidiary companies under the umbrella of the multinational enterprise can be learning from it. Just as the headquarters will also be learning from what is happening over there. Okay, so that will be all for the day. Thank you very much for your time, and do have a good day.